is the EU, maybe they're making an example of the UK, and they're going to scare other countries like Italy and these countries from, daring to think about leaving the orb that is the European Union?
Yes.
Or are these guys just so in their own little bubble, in their own oligarch, sitting high on the mountain, high on the throne kind of world, that they don't realize that, for the EU, this is a huge loss?
Yes, there's a lot to unpack here. Now, can I just go back to a program that you and I did a little while ago, in which I said that there are some people within the EU bureaucracy who are not sorry to see Britain go, and the reason is that the British have always been the awkward squad within the EU. Of course, now there are other countries like Hungary which have taken that much further, but the British have always been a disruptive influence because they've never been fully committed to the whole EU project in the way that, say, the Germans and the French historically have been. So there is that side. But of course, I think overall, the EU leaders still think that, they've got the British where they want them with this deal that Theresa May has negotiated. And I think they haven't quite figured out the fact that Britain is actually now increasingly looking like it's going to leave with a no-deal Brexit on the 29th of March. And I think you're absolutely right in saying that these people live in a bubble. I think they cannot comprehend that after the initial period of disruption that Britain will undoubtedly experience in March and April, things will sort themselves out and the British economy will adjust, and Britain might easily prosper, and then that will be an EU without Britain anymore, and with Britain potentially doing well. I don't think these people are able to comprehend that. I think that is so far outside their own mindset and world, in which everybody wants to join the EU, everybody wants to be a part of the EU, where the advantages of EU membership are taken for granted by the political class, that I just don't think they're really able to sort of adjust to this or to take it in properly. And I think there will be an awakening, but the EU needs to wake up to lots of things, and of course they're not able to at the moment.
Yeah, I'm gritting a little bit as you were speaking, Alexander, because to me, once the UK, which I also agree, the UK economy is going to really kick into high gear after this, 3 to 6 month phase of getting over this Brexit. Once it starts doing well and it starts really ramping up its growth, for the EU leaders, they're going to this is like their worst nightmare, because what this is going to tell other countries, the Italys, the Greeces, the Hungaries, everyone, they're going to say, so you're telling me if I were to leave, I'll survive, I'll be okay. The sun's going to rise again without the EU.
Well, bear in mind, Germany is now probably in recession. France, I think, is definitely in recession. Italy is in recession. In France and Italy, opinion against the EU is running strong. In fact, I think that in both of these countries, anti-EU sentiment is now in the majority. If a country like Britain is able to leave the EU and do well outside it, well, of course it will have an effect on people in Italy and France if they see recessions continuing there and their economies continuing to do badly. So, of course, it's a bad outcome for the EU. I don't think they have the imagination or the ability to see it.
Yeah, because living in the EU, you're fed constantly 24/7 the narrative that outside of the EU, you're finished. You're going to falter. There's no survival. Everything is about being inside the EU. And now you're going to have the first real case study of a country leaving Europe. And if it starts to prosper, what does that mean?
Well, I think to answer your question, which again is a rhetorical question, it is an existential threat, given the state of the EU now, given, as I said, that the euro has proved an unsuccessful currency, given the continued obsession with more centralization and more integration, I think that it is an existential threat, given that the people in Europe are so obviously and visibly unhappy with what is happening in Europe now. So for the Europeans not to see that and not to understand that, I think is well, I mean, it's delusional. But as I said, I've said many times, including on this program, reality and the EU leadership are not in great sync at the moment.
Yeah, for all of May's shortcomings, the UK as a nation is it's not a Greece. It's just too powerful and too robust to not make it outside of the European Union. Where Greece, they punished Greece and they made an example of Greece. No doubt about it.
Yes, I mean, Britain is in a completely different league from Greece. I mean, it's a big, powerful economy with a very highly developed financial sector and strong technology industries. There are lots of problems within Britain. I'm the first to admit them. I write about them often. But Britain is an open economy. It can certainly prosper outside the EU. There is no intrinsic or inherent reason why it cannot.
So it's just about getting over this Theresa May bump, this speed bump.
Absolutely, I like that very much. The Theresa May bump, which is exactly what we're facing. I mean, we shouldn't have had even that, but we have got it. And as I said, we have a Theresa May bump. But as I said, the outcome that I think many people had feared, and of course some people had hoped for, that the whole Brexit thing would unravel, hasn't happened. The reason it hasn't happened, by the way, is twofold. Firstly, contrary to what you often read, there has not been any great shift on this question in the country. Most people who voted to leave in Britain, the great majority of people who voted to leave, still want to leave. And they are very much the majority in England, which I would remind our viewers is the core territory of the United Kingdom. And secondly, there is overwhelming feeling within the Conservative Party, within the membership of the Conservative Party in the country, that they want to leave. And if we're talking about the Labour Party, that the majority of Labour members and Labour MPs want to remain. 2/3 of Labour MPs represent constituencies which voted to leave, and that hasn't changed very much either. Those are the realities that are dictating this process.